Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jason Cole, a second-year LLB student studying here at the Faculty of Law of the University of Hong Kong. And also, I'm your moderator of today's event. So first of all, welcome to attend this event organized by the General Education Unit. The GE has been organizing non-credit bearing programs to all HAU students since the year of 1995. And since it will be the unit's 20th anniversary in September this year, so a series of GE20 Masterclass has been introduced and has received exceptionally enthusiastic response. And the GE20 Masterclass has invited distinguished guests who have in the past come to Hong Kong U and delivered insightful speeches to the unit to return and to share with us their re-enlightened vision after years of life experience. So today, we are honored to have invited Mr. Jasper Tsang to give us a talk. Mr. Tsang was one of the guest speakers invited to the first GE Forum series on civic education in year 1995. So as you can see in the photo, it was Mr. Tsang back then. And the forum back then was about the mission and the role of the Legislative Council, which just then had its first general election before the handover. And recently, last year, in the Leisure Summer Program 2014, GE has again invited Mr. Tsang to share with a group of Mainland, Hong Kong, and international students on his views on Hong Kong's constitutional development. I was also fortunate enough to be one of the delegates listening to the views of Mr. Tsang about Hong Kong's political atmosphere. Today, with his over 20 years experience in the political sphere, Mr. Tsang will discuss the essence of politics and political leadership. Mr. Tsang has been the president of the Legislative Council since year 2008. Before that, Mr. Tsang was a legislator representing the Kowloon West constituency from 1998 to 2008. He was re-elected twice by the Hong Kong Island constituency in year 2008 and in the year 2012, respectively. As we all know, Mr. Tsang was the founding chairperson of the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment of Hong Kong. Before 1997, Mr. Tsang was actively involved in the establishment of the Special Administrative Region. He served on the preparatory committee formed in 1996 and was a member of the Provisional Legislative Council. Without further ado, may we now invite Mr. Tsang to proceed to the stage and share with us his views. Mr. Tsang, please.
Good evening, everybody. I really can't remember speaking at the General Education Forum back in 1995. And what surprises me most is that I talked about the mission of the Legislative Council. You see, I lost in the election in 1995, so I wasn't even a member of the LegCo. I must have been talking through my hat. Anyway, in the next couple of hours, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about politics and political leadership, as if I knew anything about it. But before I begin, let me do a little survey. Can I know which one of you here are really interested in politics? Are you interested in politics? Well, it doesn't matter what you understand by politics. Your understanding of politics may be very different from mine. If any of you think that you are interested in politics, please show me your hand. Quite a few. Very good. Very good. And can I ask, how many of you want to become politicians? If you think you want to become a politician, please show me your hand. Not many. Huh? Oh, no. I see one hand here. So many of you are interested in politics, but not so many want to become politicians. Think of this. Plato said 2,400 years ago, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is you end up being governed by your inferiors. Think of this. Politics, I'm afraid, has always had a negative impression on most Hong Kong people. We try to avoid politics. We try to get away from politics as far as possible. One question put to me in the recent months, often put to me in recent months, is, what are we going to do? So many young people are involved in politics. So many people are getting themselves, young people, getting themselves in politics. What are we going to do? So this is a problem that so many students in Hong Kong are now interested and even involved in politics. But we can't get away from it. I remember our first chief executive, Mr. Tong Chi-Wah. I respect him a lot. I respected him a lot when he was chief executive, and I still respect him very much now. But he had a very bad aversion to politics. He didn't see his role as chief executive as being a political one. So as soon as he became chief executive, he said, okay, now, politics is over. We are now masters of our own house. Let us get down and do some solid business. Let us forget about politics. Right? Of course, he never got away from politics. He never managed to clear himself from politics. And then, more recently, I often hear people say, especially people in the government, say, we have a problem. There's a problem of everything being politicized. People, especially my colleagues in the Legislative Council, are trying to politicize every issue. Things which are purely, well, according to our government, some government officials, issues which are purely livelihood issues, economic issues, have become political because our politicians are politicizing them. They have a term for this. It is called pan-politicization. 泛政治化, right? Everything is politics. Well, think of this. Housing, of course, is a livelihood problem. Everyone, from the chief executive to the ordinary citizens in the street, believes that housing is one most urgent problem the government should try to tackle, try to solve. Right? Now, to provide more housing for people, the government needs land. And to get more land, the government has to negotiate with various parties in our community. Be it, a piece of open space in our developed area. The government wants to make use of it and put up a building there. The government has to ask the residents all around, or the district councillor in that area, who is supposed to represent all the residents, right? Or the government may want to develop a piece of land in the new territories. Let's say the northeastern new territories, right? Then the officials, they have to talk to the people living there, to the farmers. Right? You're taking away their land. They can fight very strongly against you. Reclaim land from the harbour? No way. Right? Or carve out a part of our very beautiful country parks? No. A lot of objection. So whatever way the government tries to find new land to build more housing, and everybody wants the government to provide more housing. But no matter what way the government tries to find land, it is a political problem. You can't get away from it. It is politics, right? Similarly, old age pension politics, right? It is a very important livelihood issue. Care for the elderly, right? But it is so political that my very good friend, the Honourable Longhair, decides to filibuster the budget every year. And he's doing the same a couple of months later. Right? So, it is a livelihood issue. But you can't get away from politics in order to solve it. So we have to face it. The time is long past when we had a very civilized legislative council with members who would always say yes to government proposals. Right? There was a time, before 1985, I think, when all the members were appointed by the governor himself, right? And a lot of seats were occupied by government officials. Then the government never had to worry about any proposal being objected to in the Legislative Council. Very little negotiation with the various parties was necessary. But the good old days are long past. And now we have this situation with a lot of politicians making life difficult for the government. And, make no mistake, we are moving towards democracy. True democracy, through universal suffrage. Right? Well, democracy has a lot of good points. Democracy is good, but it also has its drawbacks. One of which is you can't make decisions very quickly when you have a democratic system of government. Right? You have to face political issues, political problems squarely and solve them. You can find perhaps very good textbook definitions of the term politics. In a general sense of the word may cover things like politics in your office, right? Politics in dealing with interpersonal relationships and so on. However, I think we all know that this evening we are talking about politics in relation to public administration, public affairs, the formulation and implementation of public policies, politics in that sense. In practice, I think we can understand politics at perhaps 3 different levels. At the highest level, politics is about vision. It is about setting goals for the progress of our society. Right? If you think you are a political leader, if you think you want to become a political leader, you must have a very clear idea in what direction you want to take your society forward. We all want to make our world a better one for everybody to live in. But better in what sense? What do we think should improve if we want our world to become a bit better? more affluent, more wealthy, more comfortable, more equal. What else? More beautiful. So I believe this is a higher, I think this is the highest level of politics. A set of political beliefs, conceptions as to where we should lead our society forward to. We want our society, we want Hong Kong to become more democratic. Right? This is one of our goals. What else? We want Hong Kong to become as free as ever. We want to uphold the rule of law, and we want a more society. Social justice. We don't want the wealth gap to continue widening. We want the needy to be taken care of, right? Maybe these are some of our goals. Each one of us may have a vision for our future. What do we want our society to become in 5 years' time, 10 years, 50 years? So this is the first level. Ask yourself, if you do not have, this sense of vision, if you don't know what you want for your society, for your fellow citizens in future, then you have lost this first sense of politics. This is one level. And then there is another level, second level. Politics is also about decisions, about decision making, about making choices. I think this is one of the ideas central to the new policy address by our chief executive, right? Making choices. We have a goal, we have an objective. However, people often say, we often hear, that politics is the art of the possible. We can only do what we can. What is we can only choose among the options that are open to us. And in making a decision, any decision concerning public policy, we have to balance the interests of various parties. You can seldom find a case where an important decision in public policy is supported unanimously by everybody. Even if you are giving out a new budget is coming, perhaps they are saying the government is the problem of government is there's too much money to spend. So the financial secretary is looking for ways of spending his money. Okay, now I think a couple of years ago he handed out cash to everybody, but don't think that everybody was happy because of that. No, even if you give everybody something, you can't make everybody happy. Right? Some still think that they should be given more. Others think that the government is giving too much to some other people. So you can hardly find any important public policy decision that is, supported by the general public without any difference, because people are divided into various interest groups. They have different and very often conflicting interests. You please one group, the others not happy. So you have your vision, you have your political beliefs, and on that basis, you have to look into the interests of the public affected by a policy decision, and you have to make a balance. You have to strike a balance. Whether it is a little bit towards the left or towards the right will depend ultimately on your basic political belief. Still, you have to balance. And you have to consider whether the decision is feasible, whether it is workable, whether it is possible to carry out. Some things may be very important to you. You may think that you have to, you must do it. However, it may have to wait because there are other more urgent tasks at hand, or perhaps circumstances are not yet ready for the implementation of that particular policy. So you have to weigh, you have to balance the various interests, you have to look at the circumstances, weigh the circumstances, you have to consider your priority, the order of priority, and then make the right decision at the right time. We should do this now. This requires political judgment, political wisdom, political awareness of the aspirations, the sentiment of the general public. So this is the second level. Politics is about making decisions. Politics is about making choices, about choosing the correct option at the right time. It is about balancing different interests. Right. And then there is a third level, a more perhaps down-to-earth level. You have to implement your decision. A policy, no matter how good it is, if you cannot put it in practice, if you cannot put it in place, it's useless. And in order to do it, you need enough support. So at this third level, politics is about winning support. One question Mr. Tsang often asked when he was chief executive was, I don't understand. Every decision I make is purely for the good of Hong Kong people. Why don't I get enough support from them? Huh? What is your problem? When he was talking to the various political parties, what's the problem with you? This is a good decision. Why don't you support me? Right? This is the problem. As I said earlier, you can hardly find an important decision in public policy which enjoys unanimous support from the public, because people have different interests. Right? The government wanted to expand the landfills in 3 areas, right? Jiangguanlou, Tuen Mun, and Daguling, right? So, I am a legislative council member elected from a geographic constituency. So I went about asking my constituents, asking my voters, whether they support the government proposals or not. Everyone I asked supported the expansion of the landfills. My constituency, of course, is on Hong Kong Island. Right? I asked them, You support expanding landfills? Yes, of course. How can people object to it? How can they be so selfish? Ask, where do you live? Wan Chai. Do you want a landfill in Wan Chai? Of course not. There's no space in Wan Chai for landfill. Don't joke, don't joke. All right? So this is it. And then, of course, we have, we have district councillors from Zhongguan, one district councillor in particular, fighting her life against, expanding the landfill there. So, I know the CPU of the government, Central Policy Unit government, has always been doing a very good job in sounding out public opinion, in doing public opinion surveys, right? Now, a very easy way to govern, I believe, is to rely on these popularity surveys, these public opinion surveys. I want to do this, okay, I want to expand the landfill in a certain area. Okay, I ask the CPU to do an opinion survey. If it comes back, 80% of the people support it, then I go ahead. If there is only a 30% support, well, then I scrap it. It's so easy. Will it work? Will it work? Right? The government wants to say, build a new bridge, build a third runway for our international airport in LegCo. Public opinion survey, 70% support. Okay, we go ahead. If that's the case, if we can govern in that way, then you or I can become the chief executive. Anyone can become the chief executive. Right? So easy. No. If it is a responsible government, from time to time, you have to push ahead with policies which you know are not popular. You have to go ahead in spite of very strong opposition from the community. And what do? You can't simply ignore the objections. You have to neutralize them. You have to win over them, right? You have to win the support of the majority. The public opinion survey is all right. You have to do it. Okay, we want to push ahead with, say, this new tax. Several years ago, when I was an LegCo member, the government, the then CE was Donald Tsang. He tried to introduce a new tax. What was it called? The GST? The General Sales Tax? And then, of course, there was a lot of opposition from the public. Yes, you can carry out an opinion survey, right? You find out the majority of the people are against it. You ask yourself, go back to your beliefs, right? To your political conceptions. Is it the right thing to do? If you convince yourself, yes, this is the right thing to do, we must do it, then instead of scrapping it, you have to go about winning the support of people. You go out, you talk to people, talk to political parties, win the support. This is what the government must do, and this is politics. Let me tell you this. When the government started this new system of political appointments, it was in 2002. You remember that? Remember that? It was again during Mr. Tong's administration. He decided to lift this layer of principal officials from the civil service. Take it away from the civil service and make the principal officials political appointees. It's called the accountability system. Now, when the government decided to do it, the officials directly in charge of implementing the new system, including Mr. Donald Tsang, he was the chief secretary then, and also right? They went around talking to the various political parties. And you know what Donald told me? He said, look, in future, these principal officials, they are not going to spend all their time in their own offices. They'll be going among the people. They will talk to the people and win over them. And then Donald said, if a government proposal has the support of the majority of the Hong Kong people, let's see which political party would have the courage to oppose it. Right? So that was what, and I hurried back to my party and said to my colleagues, look, we have to be careful. The principal officials are going to, hold this, what's it called? This town hall meetings, this public hearings, and compete with us. Because before that, it was only the political parties that have been doing it, right? We go to the open spaces in the public housing estates from time to time, or the community halls, and held meetings with the public. We talk to them and listen to their views. Now, the principal officials are doing the same. Well, what's worse, when we talk to the people, what can we promise? What can we promise our voters? We can only say, I will 爭取. I'm going to urge the government to do this, to do that. All right? The people say we want a new library in our housing estate. Okay, I'm going to urge the government to do it. And then 4 years later, a new term. Did you do it? Yes, I urged the government. But it hasn't appeared. Yes, I keep urging the government. Now, that's what all we can do. Right? What about the principal officials? No, they can make real promises. If a principal official says, I'm going to build a new library in your estate, then the library will go up. So we can't compete with them, you see? So I said to my colleagues, we better work harder. We have to compete with these government officials. And then actually, who was it? Anthony Leung, you remember Leung Kam-chong? He was the financial secretary. He actually told me he was setting up 地區辦事處, he was setting up, these district offices to meet the people regularly. Fortunately, or unfortunately, it didn't happen. Never happened. And a couple of years later, I think I talked to, who was it? I think it was Fred Ma. And I said, look, when the government started this accountability system, they told us, you principal officials are going to meet the public every other week. You're not doing it. And he told me, there are so many meetings to attend, so many papers for me to read every day. It's always a long day in my office. How can I find time to meet the public? No. So that's it. But that is supposed to be, the duty, the most important job of a political appointee. To go to the people, to win them over. How can you win over the people without directly communicating with them? Yes, some of the government, what's it called? It's not called advertisement, APM or what? Huh? API. Some of them are quite good, I think. But that's not enough. That's not enough. Now you have to go and meet the people. And that is politics. It requires communication skills. It requires an accurate assessment of the people's sentiment at a certain point of time. And it requires a lot of negotiating skills as well. Right? Very often, you have to try to convince people to give up some of their interests, to sacrifice some of their interests for greater good. And you have to convince them. So this is politics at the most down to earth, most practical level. This is what I understand to be politics at work. The vision, the wisdom to make the right decisions, and the skills to win over support. And I believe these are what a good political leader should possess, these qualities. A good political leader must have very clear ideas of what he believes a good society, a good system of government should be. He must have a very clear vision. Where does he want to take his society to? This is the first level. He must be able to make the right decisions at the right time. And this, I think, is not something you can learn merely by going to lectures or by reading. It requires practice, experience. When I was in high school and I was in St. Paul's College, I had a school principal which was a very good politician. He could make a very good politician. And he taught us many wise thinkings. And I remember once he said, look, the most important quality of a leader is not to always make the right decision. This is not the most important quality. It is the most important quality is always to make others believe that he is making the right decision. I guess he was right, but no, you have to make right decisions often enough in order to, instill confidence in those around you and make them believe that you are always making the right decisions. So this is important, a political leader. And then, of course, he must possess the skills, the necessary skills to communicate people, to win over people, so that his decisions can be implemented. I look around, I believe I find all these qualities in all the political leaders I think are capable of building up a successful career in politics. You agree? Any question first up to now? I know that later I have to answer your questions, not necessarily on what I have said, but yeah. Yes?
What is your mission? Where do you want to lead Hong Kong to?
I have only a vision for myself. And that is a very peaceful retirement life. I'm not ambitious enough to think of leading Hong Kong to anywhere. I understand my own shortcomings. I understand the limitations of my abilities. That is why. You see, I'm talking about the qualities of good leadership. This doesn't mean that I'm telling you I'm a good political leader. Right? You see, during the first lecture in my master education program, I came back to this university for it 30 years ago. The professor said, the first thing he said was, those who can, do. Those who cannot, teach. Right? So, I can. I'm telling you, but I have observed quite a lot. Ever since I got myself, it was an unfortunate accident, in politics. I got myself involved in politics. I tried to observe all the politicians around me and in other parts of the world as well. I read about them, I watch them. And what I have just told you is some of the things I found watching others. So it doesn't mean that I'm telling you I have such qualities, no. Any question that is not so personal?
Comparing among Tong Chee-hwa, Donald Tsang, and Swallow, who do you think have a better political leadership?
I'm not going to grade them. However, I won't get myself into serious trouble by comparing them. The three of them, they are very different. Yes, they are very different. Well, in terms of what I have said, I believe among those three, contrary to what many people have observed, because many people said, Mr. Tong was the one clearly with visions, right? But personally, I would think that among the three, Mr. Tong, Mr. Tsang, and Mr. Leung, of course, it's a bit unfair because Mr. Leung hasn't completed his term yet. But judging from what he has been doing and saying, I would think that Donald Tsang was the one with the clearest set of beliefs of what the good government should be and where he should lead Hong Kong or where he should keep Hong Kong in, right? Because he had been a career civil servant before taking up the political post in the government. And I think many of those I have met coming from the former government have this very clear belief in the free market. In big markets, more government. In minimal intervention by the government. Most of them, or perhaps all of them, are very proud of the fact that Hong Kong has been ranked the freest economy by the Heritage Foundation. You know what the Heritage Foundation is? It's a very conservative think tank in the United States. For 21 years, ever since the Heritage Foundation invented this idea of the Economic Freedom Index, Hong Kong has always been at the top. I began to ask myself some 5-6 years ago, why? If this is such a good thing, right? Being a free economy, why haven't all the other good, countries, wealthy countries, free democratic countries, why haven't they tried to catch up with Hong Kong or, do better than Hong Kong. And then, of course, the main reason I tell you, the very important reason, one very important, because I did study the way the Economic Freedom Index was compiled some years ago, the 10 components, and I found a secret. The only one factor which dominates the scoring, and which Hong Kong did much better than all other countries, all other economies, small government. We really have a very small government, meaning we have a very low level of public spending in relation to our GDP, right? And Donald is very strongly committed to this belief, right? When he was chief executive, this idea of a small government was under such strong attacks that he actually had to talk about it in at least 2 of his policy addresses, I think, perhaps 3. And in one of his policy addresses, he defined his idea of this small government in a very simple way. Small government means public expenditure below 20% of GDP. That's it. And he said, I am ready, I am glad to debate with anyone on when and how the government should intervene into the economy on the basis that public expenditure must stay below 20% of GDP. Right? That is it. So he had the clearest idea of what the government should and should not do. Now, Tong, yes, Mr. Tong, because he was the first chief executive, I guess all of us in Hong Kong, and perhaps the leaders in Beijing as well, were we were very confident of ourselves, confident in ourselves, right? Very sure of ourselves during the initial years of the handover. And, we were in a state of euphoria, if you know what I mean. We thought we could do anything. And so Tong had a lot of grand ideas as to what Hong Kong should achieve. And then, of course, not many of his ideas did materialize. And I wouldn't say, of course, he had his own beliefs. I think Tong knew the way the economy works very well. He knew it very well. But I wouldn't say he was a man with very clear political beliefs, political convictions. And CY, before he became chief executive, and after he decided to go for the post, right? That was a window of about 2 years. He published a lot of articles, and he went around making a lot of speeches. And those who have read his articles and heard his speeches said unanimously that CY is a social democrat, right? Some of them would say, look, long hair is not a true social democrat. CY is a true social democrat. I think if you look at his 3 policy addresses, this is a very clear sign that CY does want to see a more equal society. He does want to do more for the needy, for the poor. But is it because of his... does he has a coherent system of political beliefs? I'm not sure. I don't know. We still have to wait and see. And then, of course, another thing that is unfair is CY has never been allowed to, to go his way, to do what he believes is good for Hong Kong. He took office under very difficult circumstances, and it has become even more difficult for him, right, in the last 2.5 years. So it is difficult. Rank them, they're all very good. I'm sure. Shall I stop here and what? I think it's time for a dialogue between Jason and me. So I sit here?
Thank you, Mr. Tsang, for your insightful views about the politics and political leadership. And as I understand, you have mentioned that you think that there are 3 qualities to become a good political leader. But I wonder if there's any, as you have mentioned, there's some conflict between the first idea of having a clear set of conceptions, your political convictions about where the society is going to, and the third idea of gathering support from the majority. So how do you think as a politician in practice can actually strike a balance between these views, and when it's the time to affirm one's own political convictions, or when is the time for one to conform to the majority view or the democratic view? Isn't the democratic view also, the majority view also a part of how a politician arrives at what is just and reasonable for the society?
I believe that if you are a good political leader, you should never give up your own political beliefs, your own political conceptions in the face of populist objection. No. I think one of the most severe criticisms of present-day politics in Western democracies, especially in the United States, is this so-called populism, relying on popularity surveys, opinion surveys, to make your decisions. You give up your principles, you forget about your principles, and you always bow to public opinion. Right? I read an article which said that when Bill Clinton was American president, he carried out a public opinion survey even to decide where he should go to spend his vacation. Right? And I mean, when George Bush Jr. became president, he sort of laughed at Clinton for carrying out this so-called permanent campaign, always carrying out these public opinion surveys and without standing on his principles. But then Bush did the same when he became president. And when he came to Obama, well, the article said Obama did even more. All right? Despite his popularity when he was first elected, he decided that he should rely on the public opinion polls to make important policy decisions, right? Rather than standing on his principles. So, yes, maybe this is reality. You have to compromise, but I believe all the political leaders that are worth a mention in history know they must stand on their principles. You may, this is what I mean when I said you have to make the right decisions at the right time. In Chinese, you have to 审时度勢, you have to judge whether circumstances are suitable for you to push forward with perhaps a controversial policy. But that's not giving up, right? That's not totally giving in to popular opinion. I think no, you can't really claim to be a good political leader if you do that.
So I think you have mentioned that you believe that a good politician should stand on his or her own principle. And apart from government officials, probably I think the audience might also be interested to know about how would you view the development of political parties over, the past decade. Because as we observe, some of the political parties in the Legislative Council, they might change their stance, or they might veto the government's proposals according to, for example, according to the view of their constituencies. For example, the Zhangguan-O landfill. I live in Zhangguan-O, and the councillors in my district, it's for sure that they will not act according to any other criteria other than the view of the residents in that region. So how would you say, what do you think political parties should do, or how would you comment on their development, and how is this development affecting the operation of Legislative Council as a whole?
This is a big problem. What can you expect the political parties to do when all they can tell their voters is, I'm going to urge the government, 爭取 the government to do it. And when the government does it, everybody comes out and says, 乘機抽水, no, 成功爭取. Right? What can you expect them to do? You may have, but when I started my party, it is called DAB, in case you don't know, right? When I started my party, I went to see the head of a think tank by the name of Xiu Xinbo. You know who he is? He's now the head of the CPU. Now, in 1992, he was already heading a think tank called One Country, Two Systems, something like that. And I went to, because he was a friend of mine, I went to see him and I asked him, look, Mr. Xiu, I'm starting a party, and I believe we have to carry out a lot of policy research work in the party. Now, you are heading a think tank. Can you sort of share some of your experience in running a think tank, in carrying out policy research? You know what he said to me? He laughed me off. He said, policy research, political party, don't joke. Political parties don't carry out policy research. Right? You simply react to what the government does. Right? So that's it. I mean, in Hong Kong, we have this system in which, let me tell you this, up to now, all political parties can only be a part of the opposition, including the DAB. Make no mistake, because we are not the government. We are 保皇黨, right? We are pro-government. We are regarded as a friend of the government, a friendly party, but we are not the government, right? We have a DAB member in the government now, Mr. Greg So. He's secretary for, commerce and economic development, something like that, right? But although he retains his membership in DAB, he's in the government not to carry out any of the beliefs of the DAB, right? He's part of government. He's not part of the party. This is it. So how would you expect the political parties to try to sort of, stand on their principles, to try to sell their political beliefs to the people? No good, because the party is never going to put what it believes into practice. This is our problem. Our system is such that we have a permanent opposition in Hong Kong. All the parties are permanently in opposition. We never run the government. We never run the government. This is the problem. Right? Now I hope, after introducing universal suffrage, genuine or not, after the chief executive is to be elected by all people, and all the seats in the LegCo are elected by universal suffrage, political parties will be able to play a bigger role. I believe that will be the case. Because with universal suffrage, with popular elections, I don't think anyone can take part without the support of political parties. Political parties are formed for the specific purpose of contesting in the elections, right? So I do hope that with popular elections, the parties will become more important. They will play a role not only within the legislature, but also in the executive arm of the government as well in future. Then, only then, can we talk about, the political beliefs of the party and putting them into practice, I'm afraid.
I think maybe we should look forward to the day when probably if the universal suffrage could be launched, then the executive legislative relationship could be better off, and there would be more interactions between the two. And you have, in the beginning of your speech, also mentioned that more and more students are now more engaged in the socio-political participation. But I think this kind of participation is quite different from that in the past, because in the past, when we're talking about politics, what comes up to our mind is that the so-called top-notch graduates or the elites of the youth generation would probably try to join the government. And
Are you sure?
I think at least it's more prevalent than what it is now today. And I think that maybe that is what we commonly understood as administrative absorption politics. But nowadays, teenagers they tend to engage in politics in some non-institutional channels, such as joining in the demonstrations or participating in the civil society. So what do you think how do you view this phenomenon, and do you think that this is a better way to give them experience and nurture better political leaders for Hong Kong in the future?
Well, of course, taking part in public protests can only be a very short-term exercise. You can't. Well, I know that there are a few career protesters in Hong Kong, professional protesters. There aren't too many, right? And then, of course, the 80 days, 2.5 months, towards the end of last year, were very special. It was a very special time, a very exceptional time, I guess, in Hong Kong. And, these things do not happen every year, every month, hopefully. So when we talk of participation in politics, I think most of us must be thinking of joining a political career, right? Taking a political career, joining the government, or trying to win a seat in the district councils, legislative council through elections, or perhaps joining a political party and helping with the party building work. I must say, up to now, perhaps the most important reason being our system, up to now we do not have a very attractive arena for young people who are interested in politics, who are interested in taking up a political career. There are not many opportunities open to such young people. Again, I hope that as we move towards full democracy, as popular elections become more and more important, our society will come to realize the importance, for example, for more high-level think tanks, for more attractive terms to attract better, to recruit better people into politics. Now there's one of my most favorite quotes from CY. Yes, that's what Mr. Leung told a magazine some 20 years ago when he was interviewed. And he said, in response to the question whether he was going to run for CE or not, he said, in Hong Kong, all the first-raters go into business. Only third-raters would go into politics. Right? And I think this is quite true, because politics simply isn't an attractive career. I mean, well, joining the government maybe is better, right? But many of us do not see, especially after we have this accountability system. I think we can no longer equate civil servants to politicians, right? Yeah? So joining the government doesn't mean joining politics at all. So I'm still looking forward to the day when we have, really attractive career, so that we can recruit the best people, as you said, the elite among our university graduates into politics. But that day hasn't come. No.
I think perhaps it's time to open up the floor to take some questions. I'm sure that the audiences are all very excited to ask many of their interesting questions.
I think you've already asked your questions.
So before you ask your questions, please briefly introduce yourself. And in particular, if you're a Hong Kong U student, please identify your name, your year of study, and your curriculum. So
what's that for?
Just as a matter of courtesy and enable you to better understand the students here. Yeah. So go over.
Hi, Mr. Tsang, I'm Chong, and thank you for your interesting talk. And I'm studying here. I'm studying economics, and I have a stupid question. And I thought, people like us, we want democracy because we can take into account of the public's opinion when the politicians are doing their decisions, and it can follow our view. And I think it is the people who should be ruling. But according to your talk, and I think I have a sense that you think the leaders should have their own visions, and they should not follow our judgment, the public's judgment. And can you elaborate that more? And I've also got a similar question, and it is you say the top leaders should have their own principles, and if they cannot get any support from the public, they should go and talk to the people. But then how about if after they go and talk to the people, they still get not enough support? Should they push forward their policies, or should they just give up? What is your answer? Thanks.
Good question. There was a time when people believed that true democracy is a system in which those who make decisions are only making those decisions how shall I put it? They are only representatives of the people. They are not making their own decisions. They are making the decisions. The public, let me put it this way. The public, the people, are making their decisions through this elected politician. Right? So, you're quite right. This elected politician, he should not have his own beliefs, his insistence in his own principles. He should simply represent the people. When a question is put to him, before answering, he asks all his voters, right? And then he can only answer the question as a representative of his voters. I think it was a guy called Joseph Schumpeter, I think, about 100 years ago, who, put an end to this belief. We elect someone to become our representative. We elect someone into the government because we believe that he is good or she is good. Not because we believe that he won't do anything without asking me. That doesn't work. So politicians have become professional politicians. I have a friend who's a professor in the Chinese university now. He is very much against the kind of democracy we know. He calls it electocracy. It is not democracy. It is electocracy. Because, in these elections, very often it is not the best people who are elected. It is people who are best in running election campaigns who get elected, right? And so he says, pay attention to this. This friend of mine, I think he's a very intelligent guy. He says, the most democratic system is we decide who our leaders are by drawing lots, 抽籤. Every 4 years, we draw lots and decide who our leaders are, right? Because in any case, they are not going to make their own decisions. They have to ask every one of us, so anyone can do it. So this is the fairest way. There is a fairest way. You cannot have, this 以權謀私, because you have a very good chance of staying in your office after this term. Of course, it won't work. So it is this. We choose this man or this lady not because we expect him or her to make every decision after asking us. No, because we believe. We believe it. That is why the election platforms are so important. Right? When he or she stands for election, he's going to tell us what he's going to do and what he believes in. Right? And, we have 2 or 3 candidates. Maybe we cannot agree with any one of them completely. However, this Mr. A, I agree to most of his beliefs. I agree with the major part of his election platform, and then I choose him instead of the other 2. That is it. And after choosing him, it is up to him, right? And so he cannot get away from his responsibility if he makes any mistake. You see what I mean? If I am elected by my constituents, and every time I make a decision, I ask them, I send out a public opinion poll, right, among our voters. And then, just like some of our functional constituency members, they know it is a hard decision for them whether to support the government's constitutional reform package or not. So they say, okay, I send out an opinion survey to all my voters, right? And simply you follow the view of the majority. But in that case, no one can blame me if I make any mistake, because it's not my mistake. But is this a good way to govern? Let's ask ourselves. Is this a good way to govern? No. I mean, we have long passed the age when we believe that, these senators, the congressmen, they're simply representative people. They have to ask their voters every time they make a decision. No, we don't. Okay? And the beauty of democracy is you put this guy in office for 4 years, 5 years. If he fails, if he doesn't live up to your expectation, then you vote him out next time. This is it. Right? You try to elect someone better. This is it. Right? So this is how our what my friend Professor Wang would say electocracy works. This is our system. So think of this. Sorry, think of this. If we have these two candidates running for the post of CE, and candidate A, tells you very clearly his beliefs, what his visions are for Hong Kong, where he wants to take Hong Kong to, right? Whereas candidate B says, look, I don't have my own beliefs. Every decision I make, I ask you first, right? I will always accede to the view of the majority. Don't worry. Who would you choose? This is it, right? This is the reality.
And is there any the girl over there? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Lei, a third-year PhD student from a Faculty of Education. I have two questions. The first is about local students' participation in politics. My question is, why have so many local students actively engaged in the local politics and social movements? Is it more related to their life experience, for example, their uncertain future, and they want to voice out their demands and requests? Or is it more because of the local education, civic education, which prepare them for more political knowledge and liberal values? And this is the first question. And the second one is about the relationship between democracy and livelihood issues in Hong Kong. And I'm afraid in current Hong Kong, livelihood problems can't be avoided. In the recent public discourses, including in the umbrella movement, people do reflect seriously upon the livelihood problems in Hong Kong, for example, the housing problems and the extreme economic inequality. But in the end, the people do not seek much for the economic reforms, the reforms of economic systems or livelihood systems, but for the political reform. Specifically speaking, is the political democracy in the form of election. And so democracy is deeply believed to be the solution, or at least the precondition of solving the life problems in Hong Kong. So I want to know how you look at the relationship between democracy and livelihood issues.
Your second question first. I think even the most ardent advocate for democracy would not tell you that he believes once we have attained the goal of full democracy, we'll be able to solve all our livelihood problems. I don't think anyone can even say that a democratically elected government must be more able to tackle livelihood issues. Right? Many political scientists like to compare, for example, India with China, right, in what the two countries have achieved in the last 3 or 4 decades. India is, of course, India is often called the largest democracy in the world. India calls itself the largest democracy in the world. Right. And China, of course, is often called the largest, what? Anyway. China is not regarded as a democracy, not yet. But all these comparisons, all the academics who have compared those two countries would agree that in many, what you may call livelihood areas, China has been doing better than India in the last few decades. So it would be too simplistic to believe that a democratic government must be able to solve or to tackle livelihood problems better than a non-democratic one. However, in the case of Hong Kong, my belief is we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. As I said earlier, we can't actually detach any solution for a livelihood problem from politics. The government has to have enough support from the community in order to push ahead with necessary public policies. Very often, the policies can be quite controversial. So we need a strong government. And without reforming our system of government, there's very good chance of a strong government appearing in the foreseeable future. And without first disposing of this spirit about democracy, about universal suffrage, no one would want to tackle these other problems in our governance. People simply wouldn't pay any attention to them. So there is no possibility of solving, of improving our governance, of building a strong government without first getting a consensus, getting a unanimous agreement among the people on our constitutional development, on building democracy. This is our problem. Right? So if you ask me, can you be sure that, for example, the wealth gap can be narrowed after we have a democratic elected chief executive? We don't know. We don't know. We still have a long way to go. But without taking that first step, we're going nowhere. This is our problem. Right. What was your first question? I'm sorry.
Students.
Oh yes, the students. Well, the students. Well, think of this. Did you go in the street? Did you join the umbrella movement? Huh? Huh?
I went to the sites.
You went?
She went to the site.
Wow. Why did you go? Was it because of civic education in school? No?
Sorry, I'm not a local, so I'm very interested in
Yes.
the themes and
It
topics.
doesn't matter. Did you go?
Yeah.
As a tourist?
No.
Take pictures?
Yes, of course I did.
Huh?
Yes, of course I did.
Think of this. Think of this. Put yourself in the place of a young student in front of the television. You see a lot of your peers, other young students, going to the street shouting, "We want true democracy. We want true democracy." Is it good? Of course it's good. Do you want true democracy? Of course I want. Of course I do. I want true democracy. And then, suddenly, this tear gas, right? The police firing tear gas at the students. Would you have the impulse to go out and support the students, support the young students? But after all, yes, there were a large number of students, young students in the streets during those 2.5 months. But they constitute only a very small fraction of the total student population in Hong Kong. Right? So let us not generalize. Let us not generalize. No. The umbrella movement did not draw everybody into the streets. Make no mistake, most young students, including secondary school students and university students, sympathized with the umbrella movement. I can tell you this because I did opinion surveys wherever I went. I had a lot of opportunities to talk to students during those 2.5 months. Wherever I went, I asked the students, which one of you sympathized with the umbrella movement? Almost every time. I had I think over 90% response from the students. Yes, they sympathize with them. But it doesn't mean that they are ready to take an active part in it. And this is normal. This is not surprising at all, right? It was quite a shocking sight, let's say, right? Seeing it on television, the police throwing those canisters of tear gas at the young students. You know, students, what are they asking for? They're asking for democracy, and of course democracy is a good thing. So I don't think it makes any sense at all to put the blame on our civic education, huh? Or on our liberal studies education. It is nonsense. People say, look, our teachers, our liberal education teachers have been talking too much to our students about politics. No, this is nonsense. Yes, sorry.
No, it is not a blame. It's just,
Pardon? No, I can't hear you.
It is not a blame. It is just, I just want to see.
Once again. Sorry.
Sorry.
Wait.
Yes.
Sorry, this is not a blame, but just I want to see whether there is any relation between them. Or, for example, Hong Kong's local education emphasizes critical thinking and the hope that the liberal studies or general education prepare students for critical thinker. So I just want to see whether there is any relation between these kind of input with the students' active participation in social activities.
I think you are, overrating the effectiveness of our liberal study education. If any of us think that the students were acting in a sort of a mature way, if any of us believe that the students were, wrong, mistaken, the right thing to do is not to stop them from learning about, these the causes of our social unrest, the cause of the resentment among our people. The right thing to do is make them learn more about it. Talk to them more about it. Let our students discuss it. I would certainly be very disappointed if the umbrella movement becomes taboo in our school, in our classrooms. No. On the contrary, teachers to talk to students about it. I tell you this, a mother brought her daughter to my office a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. Her daughter went to the occupied area every day. She did not stay in the tents because her mother didn't allow her to. But she went there almost every day. And after it was over, she was in a depression. She could not study. And she refused to take her examinations. And of course that worried her mother a lot. And her mother knew I used to be a teacher. Right? So you see, you're a politician, you're a teacher. So you teach my daughter how to deal with this politics. I believe she was not an isolated case. I believe, think of this. What the young girl told me was, she had very few friends in her classroom. Right? Yes, so she had, a few girls in her class getting on very well with her, but she would never sort of talk to her friends about any serious matter. And then during the occupation days, she found people in the occupied area who could talk to her about things she was really interested in. Right? And she enjoyed the experience very much. And then suddenly it was over. And then she said, nothing. We've got nothing. So she was, it was a shock to her. She had a depression. I think, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a lot of such young students, right? Similar experience. So I think it's the duty of teachers in schools to understand their students and to try to give their students the appropriate counseling if they do have such a kind of depression after the movement. So I'm sorry, perhaps I haven't answered your question to your satisfaction, but that's it. I mean, we should do more in our liberal education, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Tsang. I particularly agree that the right way, the solution to improve the status quo is not to stop discussion, but to encourage more deliberation and exchange of ideas among students. So let us allow more exchange of ideas now. The boy in the middle, behind. Yes.
Hello, Mr. Tsang. My name is Brian from Faculty of Arts, and I'm a E2 student. And I would like to ask you about the particular case of being a chief executive in Hong Kong. Because what I noticed is that being a chief executive in Hong Kong is unlike any presidents in other democratic countries, is that you not only need to concern about the locals, like the Hong Kong people, but you also need to be responsible for the central people's government in China. So I had the concern that, given the first three chief executives, that I think that neither of them really know how to balance between following the CPG's idea and at the same time the locals like him or support him. So I want to know that, in your opinion, how should the chief executive try to balance between the orders from Beijing and the popular opinions in Hong Kong? And my second question is that, is there any person or could there be any person in Hong Kong ever be able to achieve what you expect? I'm not asking you to point to exactly which person, like Virginia Yip or anyone. I just only want to know, could this kind of leaders ever even exist in Hong Kong?
I don't know I don't know how to strike the balance either. That is why I never fancy the job of chief executive. Yes, it is difficult. You have to serve two bosses, the people of Hong Kong and the leadership in Beijing. And very often these two bosses are at loggerheads with each other. Right? This is the problem. And moreover, you would think that you need a particularly skillful politician to sort of wriggle in that kind of space. You need a real politician to do the job. However, I'm not sure the central government wants a politician as the chief executive. What I mean is this. It is difficult for a true politician to win the trust of the central government. Especially when you're a really good politician. I had a conversation with the former head of the CPU, Professor Liu Xiaogai. You know him? Liu Xiaogai. And we were talking about the paucity of political talent in Hong Kong, the obvious lack of political leaders in Hong Kong. And I said, look, I had heard that before the handover, there were plans in Beijing, there were plans in the central government for sort of training, grooming future political leaders in Hong Kong. But as far as I could see, it never happened. Perhaps it was because of the difficult relationship between London and Beijing throughout the final years of the run-up to the handover. So it didn't happen, and I said, well, after the establishment of the SAR, neither the SAR government nor the central government has done anything to sort of groom, train political leaders in Hong Kong. And then Professor Lau said, well, I believe the last thing the central government wants to see is the emergence of a strong political leader in Hong Kong. What if that political leader doesn't obey the instructions of the central government, right? If you're a very able politician, you're very popular, you get the support of Hong Kong people, and you revolt against the central government, then it will be very difficult to put you down. You see? So, I don't know. I mean, this is... I'm not sure whether Professor Lau still thinks the same today. But I think, unfortunately, it was not only CH Tong who thought that the chief executive could be a non-political role, who thought that the chief executive could sort of distance himself from any politics. That's what Mr. Tung said, thought. I think even the central government, the leadership in Beijing, also believed that, at least before the handover. I heard it myself from one of the high-ranking officials in charge of Hong Kong affairs in the 1990s, before the handover. He said, of course, he was trying to tell us the central government had a lot of confidence in Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong. And he said, look, what has happened in the last few decades? The British sent a governor to Hong Kong once every few years. And before this Gui Lo or Lo Ngoi came to Hong Kong, he knew very little. He knew nothing about Hong Kong. right? He was sent from London to Hong Kong. And with the support of the civil service in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong government has been running so well, so efficiently. Right? How can things go wrong after 1997 with someone chosen by Hong Kong people themselves as the chief executive, the head of government, and with the whole civil service still intact? Right? Whole civil service there. With the head of government, trusted by the central government, and chosen by Hong Kong people. How can things go wrong? They looked at it that way. So I think perhaps it is asking too much today to look for someone who, has the political skills, abilities, wisdom to serve the two bosses without any problem. It is difficult. Again, I hope that after we have changed the system, after we move on to universal suffrage, we can, because in Chinese we believe times make heroes, 時勢造英雄嘛, right? We change the system, change the rules of the game, and then, the talent will come. I hope.
It's time. Okay,
The lady has been putting up her hand for very long.
Okay, sure.
And she's one who is both interested in politics and who is willing to become a politician.
So my name is Erica, and I'm a sophomore engineering student in HKU. So I think you seem to be skeptical towards India's democracy, because I think, you should judge from the environmental issues, bad economic situations. But I think this is a risk we have to take for true democracy. Democracy isn't a free lunch, but it's definitely a lunch worth the price. Maybe at the first several decades, make really shitty political decisions and make the country really bad. But after this several decades, it's like a procedure for people to self-educate or self-refine themselves. And they'll become wiser to make better decisions. So, but here, the democracy, double quote here in Hong Kong, made me feel like being trapped in a marriage that I cannot even get divorced with within the 4 or 5 years. I don't know the duration of the CE here in Hong Kong. So I think it's far from perfect. Do you agree with that?
Let me say this first. Your initial remarks about people in a democracy getting wiser after decades, did you say?
Yeah.
Sorry, that is not happening in any of the mature democracies. Go on the net, type in the death of democracy. You get a lot of literature discussing the problems of democracy in the most developed Western countries today. People are sort of really searching their souls, asking themselves, what's going wrong? What's wrong with our democracy? How can we sort of salvage it? How can we solve the problems you now see? Right? Problems have surfaced, problems have emerged since Francis Fukuyama claimed that history had come to an end 30 years ago. Right? You heard of him? Fukuyama? The end of history? Right? A lot has happened in the last 3 decades that has made people think again. I am not disputing the desirability of democracy. But, you know, people who believe in democracy often quote Churchill, Winston Churchill, and I believe most of you must have heard this before. Churchill said in 1947, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. Have you heard this? From Winston Churchill at a speech in the House of Commons. He said, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. Now, this means, of course, that Churchill believed democracy is better than any other form of government. And I agree. But if we look more seriously into Churchill's remark, why did he first say democracy is the worst form of government? It was obvious to him, and obvious to many people. Democracy has its own weaknesses. Democracy has its own problems. If we simply tell ourselves democracy is the best system, why didn't Winston Churchill simply say that? Democracy is the best system. And turn a blind eye to the problems of democracy, to the weaknesses of democracy. We may end up with the problems that many of the Western democracies are facing now. Right? They suddenly wake up and find, what's wrong with our democracy? Why has our society become more and more unequal? Huh? Why is the government we elect not doing the things we wanted to do? Why is the government cheating us? Right? They are asking questions like this. And so we have the benefit of learning from the experience, positive and negative, from other countries that have been practicing democracy for decades. Learn from their successes and their failures as well. Right? I said earlier, you said I'm skeptic. Yes, I'm skeptic. I would be skeptic when I hear people say, bring in democracy and we can solve every one of our problems. No, that's not going to happen. However, I did say very clearly, we have no choice. We cannot turn back. We can only move forward to full democracy. And while doing so, keep ourselves fully aware of all the weaknesses and problems of democracies and try to avoid making the same mistakes that other democracies have made. Right? This is our way forward. This is what I believe. And unfortunately, we have been arguing among ourselves so much about when. Right? 2017, 2022, 2012, some years back. And I have met very few people in Hong Kong who are really interested in looking at some of the problems that democracy may bring. Whenever I try to point out some of those problems, I get responses like yours. You don't think democracy is good. You're skeptical towards democracy. But all other democracies, they are good, right? Our system is bad. Yes, our system, let me tell you, is not working. We have to change it. And let me repeat, without bringing in universal suffrage, there is no hope of really changing our system. This is the reality, right? I hope that the central government realizes this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Tsang. Despite the time constraint, maybe we are able to take a couple of final questions before the session ends. The gentleman here.
Wait. Mr. President, thank you. And I am the first year PhD student in the Department of Chemistry, Faculty of Science. And maybe I think my supervisor more worried about this evening. I attend this lecture because this is not related to my major. But I want to ask that whether do you think whether it is possible for central government of China to regard Hong Kong as a experience in the field of politics, government has chosen Shenzhen as a experiment in the field of economics. Do you think
Hong Kong
as
an experience in what?
Yeah,
As an experiment in what?
experiment in the field of politics? Maybe central government can give Hong Kong more politics, democracy, more democracy, and then spread or let Hong Kong's experience to improve the democracy or politics in the China Mainland. Do you think it is possible? And could you give some advice about this for central government of China? Thank you very much.
Can I hear the other question before?
Yes,
because
maybe.
I tend to be Hey, you know.
The gentleman here in front, yes. Here. Then Mr. Zhang will answer the two questions altogether.
This is Larry, final year student from Faculty of Business and Economics. So, Chairman, you mentioned several times in speech that you hope a full democracy to Hong Kong. But in your opinion, when will that your dream be materialized fully in Hong Kong? And how do you think about the framework given by the Standing Committee of Chinese National People's Congress just last year? And how do you think Hong Kong is going to move forward in the 2 years' time in the 2017? Because it's like an initial step for at least some extent of full democracy. What's the practical ways for Hong Kong to move on forward towards that point? Thank you.
I can give a 3-hour talk in answer to your question. But the first question, simply, let me answer your question in this way. Some time ago, I had a talk with a central government official on the election system in Hong Kong for 2017. It was before the August 31st decision of the NPCSC. And I said, I thought I was putting forward a very forceful, cogent argument. I said, look, this one country, two systems policy was, we were told, it was first conceived as a solution to reunification of Taiwan. So it was originally meant for Taiwan, one country, two systems. The Taiwanese people have been electing the head of government for years by universal suffrage. And, I mean, by all standards, it is true universal suffrage, right, in Taiwan, for choosing their head of government. Why can't you allow Hong Kong people to do the same? Is it a good question? Yes. You know what I was told? The official said, Taiwan has already been doing it, so we can't help. We can't do anything. Hong Kong, one country, two systems, because when Hong Kong returned to China, we had already been practicing another system, right? Not for other parts of China. So I doubt very much the central government would ever consider taking Hong Kong as an example for any other city in China. In this sense, I mean politically. No, I don't think the central government would ever intend the political system in Hong Kong to be copied by any other place in China. The second question, let me say this. Reality number one, we cannot expect anyone in Hong Kong who is unacceptable to the central government to become our chief executive. It is as simple as that. And I think there are good reasons for, not choosing someone Beijing cannot cooperate with to become our chief executive. Reality number two, if we wait till after we have elected our chief executive by universal suffrage, for Beijing to decide whether to appoint him or her or not, it could create a serious political crisis for Hong Kong. So if we have elected a chief executive by one person, one vote, and then Beijing says no, think of it. It is impracticable for us to, simply carry out another election and choose another one. It is politically impossible. So I guess the best way to avoid this risk is still for the nomination committee to do the screening, unfortunately. Right? However, even within the framework of the August 31st decision by the NPCSC, I believe we can still design an election method which has a much, much larger democratic factor, a higher degree of democracy than what we have had up to now, which allow the Hong Kong people, allow the general public to participate much more, in a much more significant way than ever. So and by taking that, by 代住先, we open up the doors to reform of the Legislative Council and to further reform of the method for electing the chief executive. By rejecting it, we close all those doors and we don't know when the doors will be open again. It is as simple as that. Right? So, I mean, it is not the best system I want to see, but it is, honestly, it is going to be much, much better than what we have had up to now. Can I stop here?
Yes. Thank you, President. Thanks for your sharing of the politics and political leadership. And before we end the session, may we now invite Dr. Albert Chow, the Director of General Education Unit and the Dean of Student Affairs, to present souvenirs to Mr. Tsang.
This is by Professor Yuan. Thank you. 空中勢，識天下英才。This is the 對聯。Thank you very much for joining our talk today at the GE20 Masterclass. Thank you very much.